I mean, let's be honest. Like, God designed men for war, breaking of the design of God's creation. Suicide rates are higher than they are in obesity. I mean, it's just that's why we live in the society we do today. And one of those is I think men don't do manly things anymore. So to your point, like taking a group of dudes that are in a Bible study to go like do manly things is healthy. We have churches that are led by honestly like soft, doughy men.
I competed in a strongman competition just last year. I got third overall. I skipped the first event due to my shoulder injury. So I got second in the remaining four events. Just because we are aging doesn't mean we should just throw in the towel in life and not continue to demonstrate for our children.
This is even scientifically backed. Number one cause of aging is not just the fact that you're aging, it's the lack
Mhm.
of exercise.
I want to talk about if it's okay for men to cry.
Oh, yeah, I love this, bro.
I'm going to get straight to it, and I want to speak about violence.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have I have this saying that I've stolen from Jordan Peterson that I repeat to my sons. That is, a harmless man is not a good man. A dangerous man who has it under voluntary control is a good man. And the reason why I wanted you on the pod is because you had a very similar take that showed
Yeah.
up on my
Okay.
For You page.
So you saw the clip.
I saw the clip and I was like, I got to get this guy on my pod and just do some chatting.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. Yeah. So this clip, I mean, it's gone pretty. I don't want to say it's viral yet, but it's at like I don't know 700,000 views or something like that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept is just like you said, and um, people were taking it out of context, and some of them were attacking us, like, "Oh, you just took what Jordan Peterson said." And for one, Jordan Peterson isn't the first one to have this thought. I've been talking about this for years and years and years, and I'm not the first person to have this thought. This thought is read a book and you'll see this
Yeah.
theory out there. And so, but the concept that I take it from is that sometimes the most loving and compassionate thing that you can do will require violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is like an active shooter, for example. So you're in the mall, you're in a grocery store with your kids and your family, and an active shooter walks in and starts mercilessly murdering people. Well, in that instant, the love and compassion that I have for both my family and for innocent lives will cause me to act out in violence. And the whole point of that clip was the hook of that clip was if you're weak, then your kindness has no virtue. And so what I mean by that is if if you're not capable of violence, then you don't have the ability to hold evil accountable. And so therefore you're only kind because you have no other choice. Like
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do other than be kind? So there was a lot of pushback for that clip. I mean, there's a lot of people who were, far more people who were pro the clip,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of pushback from some people of, oh, that's kindness rules the day all the time. Well, if I would have chose kindness in something like the example that I just shared of an active shooter, then lives are going to continue to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from I don't know, we can get into this however deep you want, but I come from, I spent a long time in law enforcement. And so I've seen the capacity for violence in society today. And if men, women as well, but really men, if men are not capable and willing to stand up against evil, then we have no chance at ever stopping it.
Yeah. No, I can totally agree. It's the warrior rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war
That's right.
is is usually the example that I use for masculinity
Yeah.
because I try to talk on about masculinity a lot because if you are a warrior in a garden, you're able to have your sword sheath. You're able to tend and love that garden so it's fruitful, just like a man does for his family. But if you are that gardener in a war, most likely you have your sword unsheathed, and any sound that spooks you, you're going to be pointing that sword at, and you
Yeah.
are essentially useless in that circumstance. Um, the thing that kind rules, in my opinion, if you look historically, that's not accurate at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a few million Jews who were massacred just in the last 100 years. Okay.
Yeah.
In the 20th century, over 180 million people were killed based off political reasons in the world, across the world. And if there isn't brave men, if there isn't men who are willing to commit violence on somebody else for the benefit of the greater good of those loved ones, then there's nothing that's going to stop men from doing those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. You can look at the world today and see just the insane level of violence and selfishness that we experience today. And there were people on that post like, oh, if you just let people govern themselves, they'll be fine. Well, I'm like, show me where. Like, show me an example of that. Like, do you lock your door at the night? If at the end of the night, if so, then why? If people are kind and people will govern themselves and things will just work out, then why do you lock your door? Why do you lock your car when you get out and go into the grocery store? Like, the concept is, I think it comes from a denial of reality. Honestly, it's this
Yeah.
denial of, like, um, they just don't want to. It's the normalcy bias, and so I teach some active shooter classes, and I talk about this in this. So the normalcy bias is where we take things that are not normal and we create a bias that allows us to make them normal in our life. And so
Mhm.
we interview victims from active shooter events, and they'll report the sounds of gunshots as like somebody chopping wood. So in Virginia Tech, there's a infamous active shooter in Virginia Tech. They interviewed survivors from that incident, and survivors said that they heard the gunshots. This is in a college, and they thought that somebody was chopping wood inside a
Mhm.
college because in their mind, chopping wood would seem more normal than somebody coming in and committing mass murder.
Yeah.
And so this idea, this normalcy bias is where we try to normalize the things that happen in our world into what we would think is an occurrence that we expect to happen, because violence is not something that people expect to happen. But if you go through life that way, then it's sad, but you have to be prepared, because if you travel through life that way, then you're going to be on the end of that violence one day, and you're not going to have the ability, you're not going to be prepared to respond to it in the way that you should. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. We are just so fortunate to live in 2024 where we can feel comfortable. But if a man doesn't have any value of life, when these people talk about self governing, there's nothing that is going to prevent them from just coming and taking what is yours.
Yeah,
And then,
absolutely.
and then it's funny because you'll see random clips on the social media. I saw one of this guy holding his kid, and a fucking raccoon attacked him, and he threw the kid,
Mm.
not out of getting him out of the way, out of fucking fear. And
Yeah,
it's like it's
yeah,
a raccoon. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong. Where I live, we have raccoons, and a couple
I mean,
years
they're
ago,
dangerous. Yeah.
my dogs killed a big ass raccoon, and it's like you don't want to mess with a raccoon, but
No.
the mere fact that he freaked out and it was a fucking animal,
Yeah,
let alone a man coming in with the intent to harm.
yeah,
It's like how many men are gonna just push their wife or girlfriend in front of them to save their own, to
yeah,
save themselves. It is it's kind of sad. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is, and I'm not downplaying. You know, I said this a lot. I responded to a few of the comments in this piece you're talking about. I'm not downplaying the necessity for love and compassion. I'm simply highlighting the fact that sometimes the most loving and compassionate thing to do would be to choose violence in certain
Mhm.
scenarios.
Mhm.
As husbands, as fathers, our job is to lead and protect. That requires
Yes.
skill, strength, compassion, love, confidence, humility. It requires a whole, it requires a lot of attributes. And there is love and compassion, and kindness. But those aren't, they can't be the only things that a man has, because there's going to come a time when he has to exercise love and compassion in a way that would be protective, because that is by nature what we were designed to be for our families, is to protect our families, to lead and
Mhm.
protect our families. And we have this, this watering down of this masculinity, this attack on, the really the family, and on men themselves, to where we don't even know what a man is today in
Mhm.
these times, and so, and a lot of it I think had to do with the fact that we live in a world that is so free and so tolerant of so many different ideologies and belief systems, that, I mean, everything becomes watered down. And so, I mean, there's a you have to develop your ground truth. You have to decide, what is my ground truth. When I strip everything away at the end of the day, what do I believe? What am I willing to put my stake in the dirt about? And if you can't find that, if you don't really stand for something like that, then, I mean, you're going to fall when opposition comes against you. And I think, I mean, that's what we're seeing today, is people don't really stand for anything. They they're just kind of blowing in the wind. And whenever something comes that blows them this way, they're like, okay, cool, let's go this way. And something blows them the other way, and they're like, okay, let's go this way. And I know that I'm all about, caring for people and loving for people,
Mhm.
but there is a time when tolerance becomes unloving. There's a time when accepting certain things is no longer loving at that point. Um, and I think that's part of the issue that we run into today, when with this, especially with this, the attack on men that we're seeing in our society right now.
Yeah, and the tolerance. I mean, I not to beat a dead horse, but if you would have asked me in 2019 if half of our country would have been, or majority of our country would have been in wearing masks and hiding in their homes, locking themselves in their own homes, I would have told you you're fucking crazy.
Yeah,
Not in America.
yeah,
That's in other countries they do that.
yeah,
And the the people there was men even in my circle, and I say circle because we all have the circle that we choose, and then we have a little bit larger circle of people who we associate with via work, via wife's friends, Bible study groups,
hobbies, yeah, yeah,
hobbies. Your kids are in sports, so then you hang out with their parents.
yeah,
So in this larger circle that I had men who were trying to come up with every excuse under the book on why they were complying. And it's just like, if you're willing to comply with the most minimal things like this and lock yourself in your home when we're supposed to be a country of free men, like, I don't know what you're willing to fight for.
yeah,
Like, because the fights only get tougher when you start to escalate, like, well, are you willing to fight for this or for this? It just gets harder.
yeah,
It doesn't get easier. And then to me, a lot of men will be like, you know what? If I'm not willing to fight for this, there's no way in hell they're going to fight for something that's even more severe, that's even more harmful. And it's kind of sad.
yeah. Yeah, it makes me. I think about this concept that truth is narrow. 2 + 2 is 4. You can't. There's, like, that's true.
Mhm.
There's a narrow window there, and so when we start to broaden the scope of what we say is true, then we start to lose the core values and virtues that make us who we are, and make
Mhm.
this country great. And I think, we see that today with, like what we're talking about, the specific thing we're talking about with this tolerance and this acceptance, is if you're not willing to stand for truth, if you're not willing to say that, hey, this is my ground truth, this is what I believe in, and fight for that, I mean, then we're gonna have nothing to pass on to our kids. We're gonna have no legacy. We're gonna have no generations whatsoever. And that's a scary thing, man.
It is. And I think it's conversations like this, on how we can spread this hope, you could say, for young men. And
Yeah,
it's also how we are as fathers, which is the next thing I want to talk about.
yeah,
Because I've heard you talk about is, it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, what kind of accolades, if you're not present and
yeah. I
raising
love it.
your children. And I'm very fortunate that I make my own hours. I work from home, work for myself. Um, Usually my kids, sometimes on my pod, you can hear them because they're a couple rooms over or something, just
Yeah,
being wild boys. So let's talk about what it looks like just being a present father in this day and age where oftentimes families need two incomes to support themselves.
yeah, man. I love this topic. I'm so glad you bring this up. I'm passionate about this topic. I do talk about it a lot, and so I shared earlier. I spent some time in law enforcement. And I'm still connected in the community. I still do work in the community, in the law enforcement community, um, and we everybody wants to point at, like, they want to place blame on the system, like the criminal justice system, or oh, it's the school system, or it's the education system, it's the teachers. Like, what's going on at home?
Yeah.
Like, where's the kid's father at? So where's his mom at? And I point to father because when I was a police officer working the streets. I mean, this is a rough guess, but more than 90% of the people that I dealt with that were committing crime had a fatherless home, lived in a
Mhm.
fatherless home. They didn't have anybody leading them. They had nobody holding them accountable whatsoever. And so I got to see firsthand, even before I had kids, the impact that men have on their generations that come behind them. The lack of a father's presence in the home is one of the most detrimental things that a child could deal with. I mean, you're talking every single negative statistic you could think of: drug abuse, likelihood of ending up incarcerated, suicide rates. All of them increase dramatically when the father is not present in the home.
Mhm.
And so let's talk about, what does present mean? Does that mean that you're just around? No. I mean, people think about fatherless homes and they think about, oh, well, my father abandoned me when I was a kid. Yeah, that's one example. But another example is a guy that is just not engaged with his children whatsoever. And so, I do say this, and I hold myself accountable to this. And I'm not saying this like I'm perfect at this. I'm saying this as in, I have to also check myself on this. If no matter what I achieve, outside of the home, I'm a professional MMA fighter. I've been a cop. I've had a podcast. None of that matters if I'm not leading well at home. If I'm not being there for my kids, if I'm not leading my wife, and I'm not cherishing my wife, and I'm not setting the example for how a man should treat a woman in front of my children, then I mean, literally what I do outside the home means nothing. I mean, that your legacy is your children, your legacy is your family. And if men continue to stop focusing on that, then we're going to continue to see the decline in the virtues that we have in our society today. So yeah, man, I mean, I've heard you talk about this too, and I've seen your stuff, and I love that you push this message out there, because I don't think there's one that's more important, honestly, to talk about.
Yeah, we as fathers are literally programming our children.
Yeah,
And we have been programmed by our fathers. And I truly believe that it takes a very special man to reprogram himself if he did not get
yeah,
a quality father figure growing up. You have you most people are not even humble enough to realize that they have to reprogram themselves from the fucked up childhood that they had or lack thereof
Yeah.
or whatever it is. They might think they had a great childhood, but like you said, the father may have been there, but never actually physically present in the of just making quality time with their children. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I came from a 2 parent household. It's like, yeah, but did you actually like know your father, or was he just punching the clock, coming home, feet up,
Yeah.
you know, kicking back some brewskis,
Yeah. Not
yelling at you,
engaged.
not engaged,
Yeah.
quick tempered, etc. Um, we we gotta often take responsibility for our children. I've made a post that there's no such thing about bad kids, just lack of leadership.
Hmm. Yeah.
And people don't like that one either. And it's like,
Yeah.
but it's us as men have to hold ourselves accountable. And
Yeah.
there's something Jocko Willink, extreme ownership.
Yeah.
They are programmed by us. Lack of leadership. And then what you were saying, that I suggest anyone look up the data on fatherless homes when it comes to incarceration, being obese, the look at
Suicide rate. I mean, the suicide
suicide
rate,
rate. Look at
drug
the
addiction. I mean,
schools. Look at
everything.
the school shooters.
Yeah.
I think the last time it was 10 out of 11 fatherless homes,
Yeah.
and it's
Absolutely.
like there's a pattern. There's
Yeah.
a pattern, and it needs
Yeah.
to be talked about. And more men need to be willing to be humble enough to be like, "Hey, I need a community." Guys like yourself. I don't know if you know Adam Allred, this guy who I've connected with who talks about
Yeah.
this. They need to be humble enough to take advice, and you'd be like, you know what, maybe I'm not. My parenting isn't up to par.
Yeah.
Like these kids are going to be very dependent on me for a while to guide them and program them the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is super important as well, because that the community you're talking about is that level of accountability
Yeah.
that I think every man needs. I love Jocko and Extreme
Mhm.
Ownership. Honestly, I mean, one of the books that helped me significantly when I started trying to understand leadership. But I think there's another side to that, and it's extreme accountability.
Mhm.
So as men, we have to be held accountable, and we're not going to be held accountable if we're not in community with other strong men. And so we need to be looking for that community. We need to be seeking that out. Otherwise, I mean, we're going to be left to our own, understanding. We're gonna make our own rules. And it kind of falls back to what you were talking about earlier. Like all of us have, there's nobody in this life that's perfect. There's nobody in this life that doesn't have some level of trauma that they've dealt with. Some are more extreme than the others, and some of us did. Some people did grow up with a fatherless in a fatherless home without a father. And it's like, okay, well, what does that person do? Well, then he needs to surround himself with other men who can hold him accountable, so that he can start to take ownership in his own life, and he cannot become the victim of his circumstances. And that's another thing that I saw a lot in the community is guys who did have fatherless homes and even recognized that they were, that they didn't have a father that led them, and that was part of their problem. But then they refused to take ownership for their own life and take accountability for their ability to change their own legacy, for their ability to um, actually not be a victim of the circumstance that they had no choice in, which was a fact that they just had a crap father. And
Mhm.
so this is not, we're talking about this, and this is not like, well, if you had a crap father, you get an excuse. Like, no, actually, you don't get an excuse, because that somewhere the generation, you have to break that generational cycle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just become a legacy of losers, right? You just become a legacy of deadbeat fathers, husbands, and you're just going to raise more deadbeat fathers and husbands. So at some point, somebody has to break that generational cycle and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm going to surround myself with other strong men. I'm going to get myself in a community so that I can continue to sharpen my axe and make myself um, stronger and have the ability to actually change my legacy.
Yeah, and if they can't find it personally, it's that's where I think a social media is good. It's like, don't follow 500 accounts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Follow fucking five motherfuckers who can literally make a positive impact in your life, and that's
Yeah,
it. You shouldn't be following chicks. You shouldn't be following just random accounts. It's like literally follow
yeah,
five dudes who are going to be your circle, even though you don't know them in person, but they're putting out content where you can just eat that up and change your life. And people who men who've gone through actual trauma, because I think that word's overused
yeah,
in this day and age, because there used to be a time in history where trauma was just another day in life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if someone's gone through something that you will just classify it as actually trauma, use that as adversity that you've had to go through in your life, and that actually gives you an advantage over the guy who never has had it gone through any sort of adversity.
Yeah.
Like, instead, we want to play the victim instead of using it as that adversity that we've had to overcome,
Yeah.
and acknowledge that that shit happened. The victim mindset, man, that has always irked me, and I've been fortunate enough to not ever have that. There was times, wife and kid, I was the brokest motherfucker anyone knew,
Yeah.
and I was the first one to be like, "Yeah, this is because of me. It ain't
Yeah.
because of anybody else. Nothing. It wasn't because I didn't get funded for this business or that. It was 100% because of me."
Yeah.
And it's like we don't do that. I could
Yeah.
have easily said one of my businesses didn't get funded because of COVID.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
easy out. It's a good out because I was technically raising money the fourth quarter of 2019
Yeah.
in negotiations. Q1 of 2020 comes through and something happens in February, and they're like, "Hey, we just want to kind of look at what this is." I could have used that excuse, but you know what? I should have got funding sooner. I
Yeah.
could have worked harder and got it in Q3 of 2019, Q2 of 2019 when I first started, but I wasn't hustling enough.
Yeah.
It was on me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Absolutely. Or you take like what you were saying earlier is you take that as a lesson of adversity. Okay, you didn't
yeah,
get the funding. Well, what now? Like
hmm
so you like crawl in a corner and you cry and you know what I'm saying? Like I'm with you. Like the victim mentality, I cannot stand it. Um, we all deal with hardships and challenges and disappointments, absolutely. But I mean the victim mentality, this idea that um, something is somebody else's fault, everything that happens to you is somebody else's fault. I mean literally that's a recipe to get nowhere in life
hmm
whatsoever. So I mean we you know anybody who's struggling with that, definitely invest in the tools um, to change that. And what you said, I think is I like what you were talking about, like um, following the right type of people. You hear this all the time in the nutrition world. Like you are what you eat. You are what you consume. So
hmm
if you're consuming, content through social media or movies or whatever the case may be, then your mind and your spirit, your heart is going to change and it's going to align with that content. So if
hmm
you're consuming, content that's contrary to what the virtues and core values that you want to have, then you need to change that immediately.
hmm
I mean, it's like, dude, I screen movies. Like, I'm a grown man. Literally, I screen movies. I like read movies because I don't want to be exposed to something that is going to lead me down a path of virtues that I don't want to experience. Um, and I mean that's the type of accountability. That's the mindset you need to have in order to really become successful. You have to develop. I call it a tactician's mindset. A tactician is
hmm
somebody who creates a specific strategy to achieve a specific end. And so what's your tactician's mindset? What's your strategy behind being a husband? What's your strategy behind being a father? What's your strategy as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as an athlete, whatever it is that you're engaged in life? What is your strategy for success? Because I think guys go out and they just kind of like whatever happens happens. And I mean that's there that is literally no strategy whatsoever. And it's hard enough to be successful in this world. So if you go at it without any strategy, then you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got to be honest on who it is that we are following, because it can be easy to be a man and be like, you know what, one of my five people is going to be Dan Bilzerian.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, but is that the model that you want to have? I don't know the guy personally, but I bet you he can be pretty fucking lonely,
Yeah.
regardless of how many people are around him.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of the reasons why I started the pod. It's like I like to talk about masculinity, being a husband, father, and faith. And it was because I was seeing content of young kind of influencers telling young men, sleep with 100 women, make $1 million before you
Yeah.
get married. And it's like, yeah, I don't agree with any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean
be very
that's
careful who you're following when you're like, yeah, I'm going to follow five guys.
yeah. I mean literally, dude, that's why I screen movies. Like I screen movies and you know, guys could be guys listening to this and think like, oh my gosh, can't believe does it. I don't care. Like I screen movies because I don't want to be exposed to another woman's, you know, nudity other than my wife,
Mm-hmm.
because I want my wife to always have my eyes. I don't want to feed something to my body that's going to cause me to stumble later.
Mm-hmm.
And people be like, oh, like that's like a sign of weakness. Like you don't like actually. To me, it's a sign of strength that you're so willing to humble yourself to know that you are not perfect, and that if you feed yourself the wrong things, then you're gonna stumble. And so, to your point, like Dan Bilzerian, I don't know the guy either, but I can tell you right now, his content is not one that I want to consume, because that's not the life that I want to live, because it leads to a life of, you know, it may give some temporary initial gain, but it's going to lead to a life of loneliness and hardship and no real strong relationships. It's all just in the flesh, whatever gets you that you know that quick hit right then and there, and that's it. And I mean, there's no value to that. There's no real um, you know, power invested into that type of relationship.
Yeah, and I'm going to double down on you talking about screening the movies. Anyone who thinks that that's not a big deal, I promise you that shit will compound
Oh
over
yeah,
time. And then you're going to wake up one day just a man living in quiet desperation and miserable because you were trying to get all these fixes from these movies and not screening your content.
yeah,
I screen my movies as well, to where I won't watch any gangster movies anymore.
yeah,
I Dude, my movies were anything Quentin Tarantino, spaghetti
yeah,
westerns. Like I loved, you know, like I probably would still watch Tombstone because they're more of a brotherhood doing good.
yeah, yeah,
But I try not to watch any kind of those old school Italian mafia themed movies, because
yeah,
that shit made me want to get my closest couple buddies and almost be vigilantes in a sense.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
when people talk about let people do their own thing, I would literally tell my wife's family and other people when they would want to compete against me in anything, because I'm competitive. If me and you were in the same place, it's like, hey, let's go roll after this and just
yeah,
for fucking fun. You know, it's like
yeah,
you're iron sharpening iron. It's like a pack of dogs just sharpening their tools against each other. No one's trying to kill each other, but they're staying sharp for when the time comes. But I would tell them, in another lifetime, I would have rode in on horseback and taken over your fucking village.
yeah,
Because, and one of the reasons why I say that is not because I beat them at what XYZ, it's because of the mentality that they would have.
yeah,
It's like, I can't believe you're just so willing to just like lay down in
yeah,
any of these different aspects in life, that it was just like, it's just kind of irks me. And my wife she's my number one supporter, but she's always been that person who's like, there's very few people who are your people.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, I know. So I'm reaching out to guys on the internet
yeah.
like freaking Sean
Because you
and
gotta find
Adam,
them somewhere.
because you got to fucking find them, because they're just
Yeah,
not, they're not a dime a dozen,
yeah,
you know? So
yeah. No, it's very true, man. Community is so important, and you do
Mhm.
you have to surround yourself with the people that you know want to be like. I mean, what's that
Mhm.
saying? You're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. Like, I mean, if the people you're spending all your time with are living a life that you don't want to live, then stop spending time with them. You know,
Yeah.
and if you think that's a life that you want to live, then you need to evaluate whether or not it really is.
Mhm.
Because we live in the mindset right now of whatever gets us that next dopamine hit, whatever gets us that next exciting thing. And I mean, there's no value to that. There's nothing real about that. It's fake.
Oh
um,
yeah.
it's dangerous.
I want to talk about if it's okay for men to cry.
Oh yeah, I love this, bro. I'm glad. Let me get a swig real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, dude. Cry all the time. And I don't say this because I think I'm the baddest dude in the world. I'm not the baddest dude in the world. But uh, one of my goals is to be, you know, I say this slightly, but I want to be the most dangerous man in any room that I walk into. You
Mhm.
know, so I say I cry all the time, and then I add that caveat because if I could say so myself, I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I'm a professional fighter.
Yep.
I have high level marksmanship skills. I'm an expert marksman. I'm a firearms instructor. I spent a long time on the SWAT team, so I have some attributes that somebody would say, "Oh, that's a tough guy." I cry all the time, bro. Like I have kids. Like I cry when my kids are born. I cry when my if somebody does something that's really impactful, my kids or my wife even. And so I think this like pound your chest, like men are so strong and they shouldn't be able to cry. It adds to this false view of manhood. It
Mhm.
adds to this false view of what masculinity means. Crying means like doesn't make me any less of a man. It just shows that I'm compassionate and loving and that I care deeply. Like when you care deeply, you feel deeply. And so, yeah, man. I mean, this whole idea of like men can't cry or men shouldn't cry. Now let's be honest. Like, should you be crying at like the drop of a hat? No, like that we might have an emotional issue if you're there might be some trauma that you need to deal with if you're crying at the drop of a hat. But for there to be something that's impactful to you that makes you shed a tear, I mean, dude, like that just means you're human. That means you love deeply. That means you're compassionate. That means you have real relationships in life, and you're not running from, you know, you're not running from those feelings. You're not running from those emotions, and you're not masking them with drugs and alcohol, which is what a lot of men do.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like your explanation because I tell people it's like I cry, and it's like, but at the same time I'm willing to throw hands with anybody,
Yeah,
and it's not in a defense of me crying. It's because, like you were saying, the the fact that the whole crying thing, and I'll go what to me is acceptable for me to cry, or what I found has gotten to me. But when you see videos on men can't cry or shouldn't cry, it's like, well, fucking I do. And I'll tell you one of the things that has had me cry 2 years ago. So I'm a big archery hunter. It's like I'm trying to hunt as many states, as many tags is that I can get, one, and two, that will my wife is okay with, because sometimes it can get excessive. But one year in my home state of Nevada, I went out on a hunt, and I always pray to God, I just need to release one arrow, just one opportunity, one arrow. That's all I ever ask for. And buck comes in, it's like, okay, range him, draw back. He runs a little bit of ways, and I'm usually pretty good at guessing. And I was like, nope, last minute, uh, moved my pin up a little bit, shot dead on where I wanted, but high. So it went over his back. And I literally hiked out 8 miles to my truck, went home, cried to my wife that I had failed my family, because I look at it as I take my archery hunting so serious that it's like I want to be able to provide my family with meat in
Yeah.
any fucking century throughout history that we
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
So it's like, and she was like, "What the fuck? You obviously take this hunting thing way more serious than I thought."
Yeah.
You know? And it was like, that is how I took it, is that I literally failed putting meat on the table for my family.
Yeah.
And I had to cry.
Yeah.
The number two thing that gets me going, I don't know why these freaking balloons keep popping up. But the number two thing is for me, if I am watching, we'll say the movie Maverick,
Hmm.
and when Tom Cruise takes the fucking missiles for
Yeah.
Rooster,
Yeah.
and then fucking Rooster comes back and saves his ass. The it's like the camaraderie of those,
Yeah.
that like bond in the act of what they're doing, dude. To me, it's like I'm just like, I want to do those things. It kind of
Yeah.
goes back to the gangster movie. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
guys, we just got to be vigilantes.
Yeah.
It's like that of them willing to be put their life on their line for one another. Dude, if I watch Maverick, it's like I'm gonna get. I don't full on cry, but it's all the emotions are just fucking
Yeah.
going
Yeah. Yeah.
and coming, and it's just like, yeah, I could just watch Maverick. Yeah,
Yeah.
those things. The things with
Yeah.
the family, the
The
family.
kids, bro. The kids get me every time, bro. I mean, I have a 2-year-old daughter. I cried when she was born. Cried when my son was born. He's 6. Cried. My wife ran a marathon. Cried when she crossed the finish line. I mean, it's the moments of like just there's so much emotion and passion involved in that. Um, it doesn't make it just makes you real, makes you a
Mhm.
human. It makes you somebody who's actually, um, I think has healthy emotions. I think that that fear of crying or that feeling like you can't cry. To me, if something like that happens and you don't cry, then there's something unhealthy about it. Like you have some probably some traumatic experience from when you were younger, or you've learned to mask your emotions. So we have 3 kids. I have 2 biological and we adopted a teenager. And I've seen this type of response from our teenager who, I'm a, I was a police officer for a long time, and I've seen and heard most crazy stories in the world, and the worst stories that I've ever happening to a human being happened to my daughter. And so I've seen this in people who have, real trauma, and they have sometimes an inability to cry, and it's actually a signal that there's something wrong. So the fact that you know this thought process or this belief that real men shouldn't cry. I mean, it's delusional. There's nothing real, uh, value or no real truth behind it whatsoever.
Yeah, well said. Um, I want to kind of talk a little bit about martial arts, because I
Yeah,
have a thing. I think every man should be in a fight at least once in his life, and I have a good buddy who's my number one hunting buddy. He's 10 years younger than me. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'm 37. So he's 27, and he went to the high school that my wife went to, and I had a bunch of buddies at that high school, and all all they did, all we did, you could say, is get in fights
yeah,
in straight like movies. It was cool. I mean, maybe some people didn't think it was cool, but when he went, I was like, oh man, my wife went there. Her sister's 10 years younger than her. So you went to school with her. And I
mm,
was like, hey man, was that school still like just known for being the fucking tough like cowboys? He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, are there a lot of fights at your guys' school? And he goes, no, man, people would get hurt. There's never fights. And this was when I very first met him. And I was just like, kind of scratching my head. Like, I think that is kind of the point of why, like, two guys would go fisticuff is they want to hurt the other guy.
yeah,
Um, but he just was like, no. And then it's like, dude, you should. you should get in a fight one time, even if you go to like an MMA gym and just be like, hey, I just want to fucking spar with somebody. You, most likely the other guy is only going to be going 60% and you're going to get gassed, but you'll find out what you have inside of you. Just two men going toe to toe. You'll find out a lot about yourself in that kind
Yeah.
of sink or swim thing. And it's my son, my older son, who's, you have a son 6, I have a son who's 7. Like, he's in wrestling and he's
Yeah.
been wrestling for a year and a half, and he likes wrestling. And then he played flag football after never touching a football, and he was the best kid on the team. He would have 2 carries, 2 touchdowns, well past. Anyways, for some reason, it was very easy. And he's like, I
Yeah.
just rather play football. And I'm like, why? He's like, wrestling is hard, Dad.
Hard. Yeah.
And he's in a club. He's on a club team who have the best kids in the entire area. They had 6 kids get D1 scholarships, where the whole rest of where we live had 1. So it's the shit when it comes to the gym.
Yeah.
So there's kids there who are just studs, flying to all the tournaments.
Yeah.
But my thing is, it's like, I think every man should at least get in one fight, and I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you this, like, you know, I've been in martial arts for over a decade. And if usually if a man comes to me and is like, man, I'm trying to change my mindset. I'm trying to, like, you know, really, really, really improve my character. One of the first things I'll tell them is start jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, really, you know, there's multiple martial arts you could start, and just based off of effectiveness and real life value, self-defense value. I mean, jujitsu is the king. And the reason I tell them that is because they're gonna have to, you know, deal with adversity. They're gonna have to learn to be resilient, because if you walk into that gym and you're soft and you're afraid of adversity, and you lack zero resilience, you're just gonna get mopped. You're just gonna get destroyed, which is okay. But then you're gonna realize how emotionally weak you are, because you're going to be physically weak because people are just going to be better at it than you.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to realize also how emotionally weak you are. You're going to leave that gym, you're going to be pissed off, and you're probably not going to go back. And that to me, that's a problem. If you leave the gym and you're mad and you don't want to go back, then that should tell you something about your character. And so I usually tell people, like, hey man, start jujitsu. Like, start jujitsu, do something hard. You know, it can be, you know, you could choose something else hard, but for one, if you want to increase your ability to be resilient and to handle adversity, then I usually encourage people to do jujitsu. Now let's go back to what we were talking about before, about the man's job is to lead and protect. So I don't do jujitsu. You know, I don't fight professionally because I want, you know, because when I'm walking through the mall and somebody shoulder checks me, I want to get in a fight with them. That's not why I do it.
Yeah.
I do it because I want to be able to protect my family, and I want to be able to protect the people that I care about around me, because I know that evil is lurking around the corner. And so, you know, we should be capable of doing that. You know, woe is the man that gets attacked, or his kids get attacked, and he can't stop that attacker from kidnapping his child or hurting his child, or kidnapping, you know, taking his wife, or whatever the case may be. And so the aspect of that as a man, as a protector, you know, that's one of the things that brings a man fulfillment, whether you know it or not, is your ability to protect your family will make you feel fulfilled as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I martial arts is a non-negotiable in our house. My son's been doing jiu-jitsu. He does wrestling as well. He's been doing jiu-jitsu since he was 4. My daughter's 2. She'll do jiu-jitsu when she's old enough. My teenage daughter, she's now out of the house. She's not a teenager anymore. Now she's 21. She did jujitsu when she lived at the house. It's a non-negotiable. Like, hey, you can choose any other sport. Like, I'll support you in any other sport you want to do. Jiu-jitsu is a discipline that we do. You brush your teeth every day, you do jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And so, and just because it instills discipline, it instills character, and it instills, you know, overcoming adversity, resilience. And so now we get into like the, one of the virtues that I think every man should have is humility. And that's another thing that martial arts will teach you. Like you go into the gym and you think you're the baddest dude in the world. Like you said, this dude's going to be going, you said 60%. It's probably closer to like 40%. If you walk
Yeah,
in the gym at
yeah.
newbie and you roll with somebody, this guy's going like 40% and he's going to mop the floor with you. And
Hmm.
it's an extremely humbling experience that I think every man you should go through. I mean, when I started, I was getting destroyed every single
Yeah.
day. And it's important, it's important for people to experience that, to realize like, man, like there's somebody out there that could really, really hurt me or my family if they wanted to. And
Hmm.
that should spur you to want to continue to train, and want to get better and want to have the ability to protect your family. And so, yeah, man, I'm a huge, huge proponent for martial arts. When I taught at the police academy, we implemented a mock fight where I would fight the recruits, because I wanted them to at least get into one fight before they ever hit the streets.
Hmm.
And so they would come in and they would have to take me into custody. Now, I've been training for a long time, and these guys, most of them, unless they just had trained on their own outside of it, would come in and just get obviously just get destroyed. Again, not because I'm the baddest man in the world, but just because I've invested in that. But what's crazy is the most people, the most recruits I've fought back to back is 21, 22. We fight them for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how well they do.
Hmm.
Again, I'm not the only person that could do this. And I say this over and over because I have to always remind myself also to be humble, because very easily we as men can learn to be unhumble.
Hmm.
But I fought these 22 recruits, some men, some women, some big men, and there was at no point in any one of those fights after 22 people, talking about 45 minutes of me fighting people, that I could have not taken their life. At any point, I could have chosen
Hmm.
to take one of their lives, and they could have done nothing to stop me from doing it. And so that should be an eye opener of what the capability of somebody who trains is out there in the world, and how serious you should take that. And this is not fear mongering. Like I'm not talking about living with paranoia everywhere you go. I'm just talking about living with preparedness. Like
Hmm.
just be prepared. You don't have to be the baddest dude in the world, but be prepared to at least, offer some protection for your family and for yourself, and for innocent bystanders that, some little girl that you see is getting kidnapped that you don't know. Well, at least have the capability as a man to step in and protect. And so, man, yeah, I mean, that's a long answer, but I could talk about martial arts for a long time.
Well, yeah, my boys, they're going to be in it till they graduate high school or over the age of 18. They're going to be in wrestling that long. It's just part of what I look at is a modern day program that I've am creating for my sons on graduating into manhood. It's
Yeah.
like this is just one of the things you're going to do, and then also the humbling experience of going to a gym. One of the best parts is when it's you're getting choked out by a guy who's only 150 pounds
Mm-hmm.
and you're maybe 205, 210.
Mm-hmm.
And you just look at this scrawny little guy and maybe he's only a blue belt and
Just
it
wiping the
just
floor with you.
it is
Yeah.
or I was in the boxing business for a long time.
Yeah. I read that.
So I loved when just going and sparring or taking buddies to go spar. I used to have my Bible study group. It's like, all right, we're all going to the boxing gym. We're all going to spar each other, or you're going to spar somebody.
Yeah.
And it would be fucking. It was fun, and
Yeah.
it was like the ego kid who was the D1 football player wanted to in our Bible study wanted to box me, and it's like, dude, let's go.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. It's
Well,
like,
I mean, let's be honest. Like God designed men for war. I mean,
yeah.
we're designed to be able to handle that. And so, I think whenever we see this a lot. This is a whole another topic, but there's so much, breaking of the design of God's creation. That's why suicide rates are higher than they are in obesity. I mean, it's just that's why we live in the society we do today. And one of those is I think that men don't do manly things anymore. And so to your point, like taking a group of dudes that are in a Bible study to go like do manly things is healthy. Like
Mhm.
it brings that fulfillment because you're doing things that you were naturally built to be able to do. And I think that's part of the issue that we see in the church today is we have churches that are led by honestly like soft doughy men, and so somebody comes in that is a stronger willed, more masculine man, and they're like turn around and walk out. That's not for me. And what that does, the problem with that is it keeps the church in that state. It keeps the church in that state of weakness. And so we need men who are strong and capable to step up and be willing to lead, especially in the church. That means leading in their home, obviously, but they need to be willing to lead in the church as well.
Um, did you see my video on fat pastors?
Oh no, but I'm gonna have to go
Oh,
back
dude,
and watch it.
I'm like, he must have. I was like, he must have saw my video on fat pastors.
No, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it though.
Yeah, I have this. I have a thing. I'm very serious that I just have a lack of respect for fat pastors.
Yeah,
You are leading a congregation of men and women, and that you are showing, demonstrating through your physique a lack of discipline
yeah,
that you indulge. It's just so.
yeah,
What else are you not disciplined in your life?
exactly.
We have one body. Or we're supposed to treat it as a temple. We have one body to live in forever. That's it. We get
Yeah,
one. There's a number of verses in the Bible on us respecting our body. We are created in His image, and therefore we should be respecting our bodies. And it's just hard for me to get behind a pastor who's telling us to how to walk the life of Jesus, and yet you're freaking way too overweight, bud.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Same for me, man. I mean, there's, I wouldn't be able to attend a church that because to your point, it's like, okay, well, you're trying to, talk about discipline and, these things, how we should live our life, and it's like,
hmm
dude, you can't even like turn away, you know, the wrong kind of food. Like
yeah,
it
no
is,
self control.
yeah,
There's
no
a
self
lack of
control
self control.
whatsoever. Yeah, yeah. So I agree 100%. I think that is, part of the problem is, and so then I think what happens is you know so like attracts like, right? So we got these soft doughy men leading churches, and masculine men are like, I can't be in community with these soft doughy men, so more soft doughy men come in, right, and they continue to lead the church, or women get involved. And I'm not saying that women can't have some leadership positions in the church, but it's not going to create it's not going to create an environment for masculine strong men that want to come in and engage with the community in and that
hmm
and I think that's the problem.
Yeah, there is no, or there's an extreme lack of iron sharpening iron
Yeah,
in the bio, or sorry, in the church right now. Um, I left my church that I was going to for a while and found a small podunk, like renting a space from a building, and I've just been enjoying it so much more than the mega church that we were
yeah,
going to, where it was that very thing.
yeah,
And it's like, man, you want to knock on all of us for lust or all these others, but you don't have the self control of just simple fork and knife.
yeah.
It's like, I get that I'm a sinner and I'm working on my stuff, but I'm not trying to lead anybody in being a hypocrite.
Yeah. No,
I'm telling
absolutely.
anyone, I'm the last person who you should follow biblically. I'm working on it freaking every single day. Um, so yeah, it's just a thing. I made
Yeah.
a couple videos on that, and
I'm
people
gonna have
got
to go watch
angry.
them, man. I haven't seen
Yeah.
them. I'm gonna have to go watch them. And let just for clarity for for the haters that will come and, oh, you guys are just as toxic. Like I'm not. You don't have to be a professional fighter. Like, but be healthy, be fit. Like you know, you don't have to be super ripped and super jacked, but have a level of health and fitness. Be capable of running and jumping and playing with your kids or fighting if you needed to fight in a self-defense situation. I'm not trying to paint this picture that everybody has to go join a jiu-jitsu gym and become a black belt and become a professional fighter. That may not be your path, but some level of that should definitely be your path.
Yeah, and you should have a level of respect for yourself to be in shape. You don't have to be the next Instagram model, but
Yeah.
you should be in shape enough to where you're demonstrating to everybody else that you respect and love yourself. Because I tell people this all the time: look in the mirror naked, tell me what you see, because I'm sure that's how you feel on the inside as well.
Yeah.
Like,
And to your point, like respect for your wife, bro. Like,
yeah, your
man, these
family.
these dudes like they're like looking for these, supermodels. And I'm like, bro, like you're soft, man. Like you're so worried about pointing, out the flaws in your spouse or trying to find this perfect woman if you don't have a spouse,
Mhm.
but you're not actually doing anything to set yourself up to be a prime mate for somebody else. So I think that this idea, this oh, we get married and then we get fat, and I'm like, to me, I'm like, like you need to keep your wife's eyes. I mean,
Oh
continue
yeah.
to continue to be the example of a man that you should be, the one that she married and the one that she's going to continue to live with until you guys die. So to your point, yeah, exactly. For yourself, for your wife, and for your children, so that you can be capable and set the example for them that they need to see.
Yeah, you owe it to your wife and your children to be continuously striving to level up in every aspect of your life. And guess what? An aspect of your life that's very vital is your health and fitness.
Yeah, absolutely, one
And
hundred percent.
and we should be striving to level up in that. The whole getting so I'm going to go back a little bit to these men who want freaking supermodel wives but they're looking soft. I made a video on that the other day too,
Yeah.
and yeah, calling out guys because when you type in Google, so I was looking for something and it says I typed in "what if my wife," and you know how it will auto
Auto.
generate the rate.
Yeah.
The number one thing is if she gains too much weight, and I was like, "You fucking pussies."
Yeah.
So I was like, "I'm making a video on this, and I'm just calling out men." It's like, "Oh, you think your wife gained too much weight? Where are your abs, bud?
Yeah.
What kind of shape are you in? Are
Yeah.
you even providing her with the resources to go to the gym, to get the best food? Are you providing her with the resources to give her the time and freedom to go and work out? Like,
Yeah.
what is it that you're doing? If we're supposed to be masculine men, and I get all the men who I'm talking to are not masculine men at all, but if they think they are or they
Yeah.
say that they are, through their actions, they're not.
Yeah.
But any of these men who think that they're, macho man, just because your chromosomes say you're a man, if you're not leading by example, if you're not providing her um, with the resources needed, like don't fucking complain.
Yeah.
I thought that shit was so funny when it was the number one thing that when you type in "what if my wife." It
Gains too
wasn't
much
what if
weight.
my wife cheats on me. It wasn't what if like my wife dies. It was what if my wife gains too much weight.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, that. Yeah, I mean
yeah,
that's the world we live in. Literally, I mean that's that mentality.
mhm,
There's lack of ownership, lack of accountability, and I mean it's just it's toxic.
yeah. And then if you're gonna have kids, you owe it to your kids to be in the best possible shape.
Yeah,
You do,
absolutely.
because we are supposed to be their Superman, their superhero for as long as possible until
Yeah,
the day that we just are moved in from superhero to now they're an adult and we're just their best friend,
yeah,
because now that we're just an adult or they're an adult. But until then, it's like we should be a superhero, and because of not because we're the most ripped, but because we are constantly striving to just be better
yeah. No,
in
absolutely.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for our sons, we're setting the example of what they should strive to be in a man, and for our
Yeah,
daughters, we're setting the example for what they should accept in a man. And
totally.
so, if that example is soft and doughy and weak minded and afraid of adversity and not willing to pursue hardship, I mean, they're going to live a life of hardship. They're going to live a life that is less than what they could live. And you have a role in that, and your role is to be the example in that. And I mean,
Yeah,
a
and you
lot of
could
men
say
don't.
that's the biggest role.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
biggest. And just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to change anything because you started your MMA career late, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I started it. I mean, well, I started training um, back in 2010, and I got a bad neck injury. I got hit on duty, and I severely herniated two discs in my neck. It required surgery, and so I stepped away from the sport for a long time. I stepped away from the sport and for like 5-6 years, and then I started training again. So if you count my time in the sport together, it's about 10 years. It's about a decade, a little over a decade of training. But I didn't actually start, competing regularly until, like you said, 2021. So 3 years ago. I'm
Mhm.
35, so I started competing when I was 33, 32 or 33. So yeah, pretty
Which
late in
which
life.
is considered very late in the sport, let
Yeah,
alone in life. So me, I competed in a strongman competition just last year.
nice.
At 36, I got third overall, but I skipped the first event due to my shoulder injury, and I got
Mm,
second in all the other events. But so I got second in the remaining four events. Everyone was under 30 in my weight class. I was 36. And it's like just because my point of all this is just because we are aging doesn't mean we should just throw in the towel in life and not continue to demonstrate for our children.
yeah,
Like you don't just fucking sit on the couch now that you've hit a certain age.
yeah, and this is even scientifically backed. The number one cause of aging is not just the fact that you're aging, especially when it comes to muscle loss. It's the lack
Hmm.
of exercise. It's the lack of mobility. It's the lack of continuous, strenuous exercise.
Hmm.
And so it's not, people think like, oh, when you hit 30, you start getting less fit and you start having the ability to build muscle. You do lose some capacity to build muscle once you crest that 30-year mark.
Hmm.
But that is not the number one reason why people become unfit. It's because they quit. They
Yeah.
actually quit pursuing fitness. Andy Galpin's famous and very well known in the sports fitness world. Works with some of the top athletes in the world, and he talks about this a lot. And he talks about specifically that it is not just some weird like weird thing where your body stops producing muscle. It is
Yeah.
actually people's you know lack of motivation and discipline to continue to work out hard that keeps them from building muscle. So absolutely, man. I mean, I'm undefeated as a professional fighter. I just started fighting again because I took a fight because honestly, I was wrestling with the victim mentality. I caught myself with the victim mentality of being like, man, like if I would have never gotten that wreck, I could have been what, right?
Hmm.
I could have done
Yeah.
this. I could have, right? If I would
Hmm.
have never gotten that wreck. And so I said, you know what? I'm not a victim. Like if I want to fight, I'm going to fight. And so I took a fight just to say I'm not a victim. And then I
Hmm.
won, and then that was the poison there, So then so I've
Yeah.
fought 7 times since then. So my last fight I broke my hand.
Yeah, I
So
saw
I've
that.
yeah, so I've gone through the recovery of that, but I plan to fight at least one more time before the end of this year, and then fight all next year, and then I'll keep fighting until it it's clear that it's time for me to stop, or until the Lord tells me, hey man, this part of your life is over.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to continue to pursue that. I think it's important for our kids to see us pursue hard things and to lean into adversity. And so that's one of the main reasons I do it. Not because I want to go to the UFC or anything like that. I fight for a good organization. I'm signed to Fury Fighting Championships. They're phenomenal. They're a large organization, but I mean, if the UFC called, I'd take it. Right, that'd be huge. But honestly, I fight because it challenges me. It's the hardest thing in the world I know how to do, um, and it shows my kids how to lean into adversity.
Yes. No, yes, it does. It's it's funny because my family came out to the strongman competition, and my son's never seen me lift, but he knows I get up at 0 dark 30, and he thinks I never sleep, and that I go to the gym, and then I'm back before they that I'm always back before they ever wake up, any of my
Yeah,
boys. So it's like, all right, you guys got to come to this competition I'm doing. And they came out, and one time he was talking about how wrestling is hard, and it's like, dude, we gotta do hard things. He's like, when you were at my competition, did that looked hard, right? He goes, no. And I was like, that was not the point. It's supposed to look very,
I'm
very hard.
trying to make a point here, son. Yeah,
Yeah. He was like, no. And it's like, all right, well, it was really fucking hard, dude. Multiple events back to back. It was cool, but he ruined my opportunity to show him that we need to do hard things and overcome that adversity
yeah,
by going, yeah, no, it looked easy.
that's
Didn't look
hilarious.
hard.
He'll remember it one day. He'll be like, "Man, Dad, that was hard. Dad did that." He'll remember it one day.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to do another one this fall
Nice.
in another state. Yeah, go compete against some kids in some other another state. All
Yeah,
these
that's
easy
important,
stuff.
man. I tell people all the time, like, man, if you feel stagnant, like if you feel stuck, like do something hard. Like
Mhm.
challenge yourself. Challenge brings about growth. Challenge equals progress. And
Yeah.
so if you're feeling like you're just in a rut in life, like go do something really, really hard and then commit to that hard thing, for at least 6 months and
Mhm.
continue to do it, for that 6 months. And I promise your character will change.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree that we need to be doing hard stuff, pushing our kids to do hard stuff.
Yeah.
We've really gotten into a place of that cycle of, you know, hard men make easy times make soft men. And we're in the soft men. We got the easy times and soft men, and I feel like there's just a few of us trying to get out of there
Yeah.
because the turn around that corner is, soft men make hard times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's this manufactured adversity is what I call it.
mm,
And because to your point, we live, man, dude, I can order pizza right now to and it doesn't even pizza. So pizza's been delivery for a long time, bro. I could order anything now with these Grubhub and all these delivery, um, uh, you know, companies. I can watch any movie I want. My kids can pull up any show. They don't have to wait for commercials. They don't
mm,
have to wait for the weekend for the show to come on. Like we get everything at our fingertips. Everything is so easy. There really is no adversity. And so we have to manufacture it. We have to create adversity. And I talk about this sometimes, especially on the podcast. Like we have to challenge ourselves. We have to intentionally challenge ourselves, and that's equally important for us to do for our children. We have to manufacture adversity for our children in today's time because we live in a time that's easy. And like you said, the easy times create weak men. And I don't want to be in a society, and I don't want my kids to grow up in a generation of weak men. And so yeah, man, we have to find ways to manufacture that adversity.
yeah, and keep having conversations like this to
Yeah,
so other people can and young men can hear this and be like, all right, these are the guys I got to follow if there's no one in my immediate circle who I can lean on. So I want you drop your podcast,
yeah.
and
So it's the right now there's about to be some change. So, but right now it's the Resilient Show. So I do it with a buddy of mine, Chad Robichaux. But I'm about to launch. he's going to take the Resilient show and continue to do that. I'm going to launch my own show. I'm not sure yet on the name entirely, but I'm building it right now. So people can just I'm most active on Instagram. Sean Top Gun Kennard. My fight nickname is Top Gun. Not because I'm a pilot, but just because I'm a good shooter. So
Right.
I do walk out to the Top Gun anthem though.
Okay.
So for Top Gun fans, they love that. Yeah, so Sean Top Gun Kennard is what I'm most active on Instagram. And then they can pretty much anything that happens with me will I'll launch on there. I do some training classes for people who are in Texas when it comes to firearms and self defense and preparedness. And then, like I said, we'll launch the show coming up, and then when I have a fight coming up, I post about it as well. And um, you know, the Fury, who I'm signed with, usually they have a contract with UFC for UFC Fight Pass, so they're televised, so people can watch it if they choose to do so. So yeah, that's what I have going on.
All right, man. Well, I'm glad to have you on, and we'll have to do this again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate it, man. Same. When we get the show up and running, we'll do an episode for sure.
All right, I'm gonna